Howdy, y'all. Just a secret between you and me. Don't tell Lisa I'm using the organ as a prop. So talking more about the Sabbath, right? Through the rest of the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, we hear story after story in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and then through all the prophets and all the other writings about how you should keep the Sabbath. The festivals that are established for the Sabbath, for communities to observe this, years of Jubilee and forgiveness and all these kind of things. And there's a ton of stuff in there we could talk about. But I want to fast forward us all the way to the New Testament, into the Gospels. So I'm going to stick with the Gospel of Luke for the next couple days, not because the other stories aren't good or anything, but it's just easier to stick with one gospel telling instead of popping back and forth. So in the 4th chapter of the Gospel of Luke, Jesus has the temptation in the wilderness, right? He comes back from the temptation in the wilderness. He's chased out of town by his home, basically said, no one believes a prophet in their own hometown. All this kind of happens. And he goes and he does all these things. He goes to the temple and says, I proclaim the year of the favor of the Lord. He opens the scroll and really aggravates people through all these stories, right? And then he comes back, and at the end, it starts out the 31st verse. He went down to Capernaum, a city in Galilee, and was teaching them on the Sabbath, right? That's what you do. You go to church, whatnot, the temple, Sabbath, and those who are teachers teach, right? They were astounded at his teaching because he spoke with authority. In the synagogue, there was a man who had the spirit of an unclean demon and cried out with a loud voice, Leave us alone. What have you do to us with Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. But Jesus rebuked him and said, Be silent and come out of him. When the demon had come out of him before them, they came out without doing any harm. And they were all amazed and kept saying, What kind of utterance is this? For one with authority, he commands the unclean spirits. And a report began to reach out to every place in the region. The reason I tell you this backstory is because Jesus was just at the temple and healed someone on the Sabbath, right? Did not sit well. And it goes further. After leaving the synagogue, he enters Simon's house. Now Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever and asked her about him. And he stood over her and rebuked the fever, immediately got up to them. And as the sun was setting, any who were sick with various kinds of diseases were brought to him, and his hands were laid on them. The demons came out of many, shouting, You are the Son of God. But he rebuked them, and he would not allow them to speak, because they knew he was the Messiah. It turns out Jesus healing on the Sabbath day really aggravated the ruling people. They said, This is not what the Sabbath is for. The Sabbath is a day of rest. In fact, the Pharisees and others religious leaders had created all these rules of how far you could walk. Could you boil water? Were you allowed to help someone? Could you feed someone? You had to have your food. Very, very tight rules. And Jesus throws them out and says, basically, was the Sabbath made for you, or was the Sabbath made for God? And we honor it. And so he heals and does all these things and frustrates the people who say that's just not what proper religious people do. So part of that is to recognize that Jesus didn't just heal on the Sabbath, right? It wasn't he just said, I can only heal on the Sabbath. He did it whenever. He could get time away, typically not on the Sabbath, right? When you're a professional religious person, you don't get Sundays, our Sabbath, right? I don't take Sundays off often here and there, but in general, I work, and you get pretty darn tired. If I started claiming I have to take the Sabbath off, y'all would not be real pleased with me. But anyway, Jesus starts healing and doing all these things to honor God, not just on the Sabbath, but on these other days. And so there's this idea of a micro Sabbath, or taking time every day to set aside to give thanks and to offer praise and worship, whatnot, and to do something meaningful to honor the Sabbath, not just one day a week. So it's not like you plow through 6 days of work and you only have one day of rest. It's that each day you take some time and be intentional. Some people do the 8-8-8, so you have 8 hours of work, 8 hours of sleep, and 8 hours of leisure, which includes, bills, yard work, eating, prepping things for the week, it's all that stuff. And so can you make time every day for a moment of Sabbath, a time intentionally set aside just to give thanks, to recognize the gifts that surround you, to go out in God's great creation and take a deep breath, whether it be kind of late summer air or fall air, depending on the hour in Wisconsin this week, or in the depth of winter in that crisp air? Can you take a moment each day and give thanks to God? So I encourage you to find some way to do that today, and we'll talk to you soon.